In your classic textbook, Logic, a very short introduction, you introduce the subject with this snippet from Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass, where Alice meets this logic chopping pair of Tweedledum and Tweedledee, who say to her, "I know what you're thinking about," said Tweedledum, "but it isn't so, no-how. Contrariwise," continued Tweedledee, "if it was so, it might be. And if it were so, it would be. But as it isn't, it ain't." That's logic. Unfortunately, I'm still confused. So let's start at rock bottom. Let's start with the silliest question possible. What is logic? Can you define it for me?
Okay. Well, look, Lewis Carroll is a kind of interesting character. He was a mathematician, but obvious philosophical interests. And the Alice books are just full of philosophical jokes. You don't realize it if you're not a philosopher, but they play on word puns and bending philosophical ideas. So he's a really interesting writer. The books are kids' books, the Alice books, but they're not just kids' books for sure. Okay, so in the passage you allude to, it's a parody. Okay, Tweedledum or Tweedledee, whoever it is sort of reasoning, but because it's a travesty, it's just, it's not real reasoning. But he's obviously going through a sequence of inferences, as logicians say. He's saying so-and-so, therefore such and such, but it's not the case, therefore it's so-and-so. This is kind of a train of reasoning. And the word logic means many things. And if you look at the history of philosophy, East and West, you'll see it gets many not always related uses. But at least as modern logicians understand the term, logic is really about what follows from what and why. So if you take a serious piece of reasoning, we're not talking about Tweedledum, Tweedledee, but we're talking about, arguments for the existence of God, for example, of which there are many in Western and Eastern philosophy. It falls to a logician to try and figure out how good that reasoning is. Now, you have to hear that in a very specific sense, because reasoning's got to start from somewhere. Logicians call these premises. It's the things you start from, right? And then you draw conclusions from those. And logicians reckon the premises are someone else's business. Logicians are only concerned with what follows from what.
Okay.
The premises are often the philosopher's business, okay. And logicians are concerned with how good the reasoning is that follows the premises, whether it really does get you to the conclusion or you've made a silly error in some sense. So that is a major concern of logic nowadays. But there was a revolution in logic at the beginning of the 20th century. Logic's been studied East and West for 2,500 years at least. But it was only at the beginning of the 20th century that mathematicians really got their hands on it. Leibniz had a go, but the mathematics of his day wasn't really sufficiently well articulated to do the job. But by the end of the 19th century, it was. And so you get the great mathematical, logical revolutionaries of the late 19th century, people like the German philosopher mathematician Gottlob Frege, the philosopher logician Bertrand Russell in the UK, and these guys and others. There's a lot of people working, but they were two of the major players. Started to apply the mathematical techniques to an analysis of logical reasoning, both in the subject and in the form. So they were both concerned with how mathematicians reason. That was the subject. But the form was the kind of arguments that get used. And they applied mathematical techniques to an analysis of those. And this was such a powerful tool that it changed logic by a quantum. And we've never gone back. And we've discovered that the application of those tools have all kinds of applications that these guys could never have dreamt of. So logic has gone through the roof in the last century and has continued to go through the roof in its applications in computer science, in linguistics, in philosophy. So nowadays, the study of logic is a highly mathematical, or it can be a highly mathematical subject. It sinks into philosophical roots. So you find yourself in philosophical debates as well. That's, one of the reasons I love it, because it's mathematics and philosophy are entangled. But to come back to your question, what is logic nowadays? Well, logic is the use of certain mathematical techniques to discuss reasoning and all the things that go with that. And that's a lot.